My name is Marcus Whitlock. I spent 26 years as a millwright at a paper mill outside Hamilton. And if there's one thing that trade teaches you, it's how to tell the difference between a machine that's running fine and one that's about to throw a bearing. The sound changes weeks before it actually breaks down. I didn't expect to need that instinct at my own son's Thanksgiving table. Except up here we call it Thanksgiving in October, and that timing turned out to matter more than anyone realized at the time. 3 weeks before the holiday, my daughter-in-law sent my wife a list. 16 dishes, 28 guests, a start time of 5 in the morning. I read it over Eileen's shoulder at the kitchen counter, and I want to tell you I have stood on factory floors where men were given less to do with more notice. Before I go any further, if this is your first time on this channel, take a second to hit subscribe. Drop your province and the time where you're watching from in the comments. I read every one of them. Let me take you back to the day I realized my daughter-in-law had badly misjudged who she was dealing with. Eileen and I have been married 31 years. Before I tell you what happened to her, I want you to know who she is. She worked as a public health nurse for the Halton region for almost 3 decades. The kind of nurse who remembered patients' kids' names, who drove out in ice storms because somebody on her list needed their dressing changed, and she wasn't about to let weather decide that for them. She is the most capable person I have ever shared a roof with. She is also someone who spent her whole life making things easier for everyone around her, sometimes at a cost to herself she never mentioned out loud. Our son Tyler is 33. He grew up careful and quiet, became a project manager for a commercial construction firm in Burlington, which suits him fine. He likes things that have a clear schedule and a clear budget. I'm proud of him the way a father's proud when his son turns into a decent, steady man. Tyler met Brooke 4 years ago at a work conference in Toronto and married her 14 months later. Small ceremony at a vineyard near Niagara-on-the-Lake. Eileen spent a week before the wedding hand-steaming the tablecloths Brooke had ordered from some boutique online. I offered to help. She told me she had it handled. That was Eileen all over. I liked Brooke fine in the beginning, sharp, organized, opinionated, and not shy about saying so. None of that is a flaw on its own. The problem, and it took me longer than it should have to put a name to it, was that Brooke's opinions almost always landed as instructions for what Eileen should be doing, phrased in a way that left no real room for no. I noticed early. I said something to Eileen once. She told me I was being overprotective. She wasn't wrong about that, but I wasn't wrong either. The pattern started small. It usually does. Brooke's birthday dinner, 16 months into the marriage. A Tuesday text to Eileen. Hey mom, Ty and I are thinking a low-key birthday thing Saturday, just his side, maybe 14 people. Your shepherd's pie would be perfect. No question mark anywhere in that message. No would you mind, or only if you're free. Just the assumption. Already dressed and standing at the door. Eileen made the shepherd's pie. She also made a Caesar salad, garlic bread, and a butter tart square from scratch, because she'd overheard Brooke mention once, months before, that butter tarts were her favorite. That's Eileen. She listens, she acts, she doesn't make a show of it. Nobody thanked her after dinner. Brooke posted photos of the table on Instagram. The shepherd's pie wasn't in a single one of them. 5 months after that, Tyler and Brooke flew to Cancun for 10 days. Tyler texted me on a Thursday. Hey dad, can Biscuit stay with you and mom starting Sunday? I said sure, we like the dog. But I noticed it was Thursday. They were leaving Sunday. And this was the first either of us had heard about the trip at all. I brought it up with Eileen that night. She shrugged, said it was fine. I said, it's not about whether it's fine. It's about how she asks. Eileen gave me the look she gives, patient, a little worn down, the one that means I know, Marcus, but let's not make this a thing. I let it go. I shouldn't have. Looking back, that was the moment to say something, to Tyler, to Brooke, to somebody. Instead, I folded. The same thing I was quietly criticizing Eileen for doing. That one's on me. 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, on a Wednesday evening, I was in the living room half watching the Leafs lose, when Eileen came in from the kitchen holding her phone. She didn't say anything, just held it out. I read it. 2 turkeys, combined weight over 22 pounds, stuffing from scratch, 10 pounds of mashed potatoes, glazed carrots, butternut squash soup, fresh cranberry sauce, not the canned stuff, homemade dinner rolls, gravy, a cheese board for arrivals, 16 items total. Below the list, 28 guests confirmed, start time 5 a.m., kitchen's all yours. I set the phone down on the coffee table, picked it back up, read the last line again. Kitchen's all yours. Not our kitchen. Not would that work for you. Just an assignment, like someone confirming a vendor for a job. I looked at Eileen. She was standing in the doorway, arms crossed, not angry yet, just very still. The way she gets when she's deciding whether something is as bad as it looks. It was as bad as it looked. I'll call Tyler, I said. No. Quiet but clear. Let me handle it first. She picked up her phone and typed back. That's a lot for one person. Maybe we could split a few of the dishes? Brooke's reply came in under 2 minutes. Oh Mom, you've done bigger than this before. You're way better at it than any of us would be. We'll be running around getting everything else set up. Eileen read it, set the phone face down on the counter, and didn't say a word. I sat there and made myself stay quiet, though I was already turning things over. 2 Sundays before Thanksgiving, Tyler had everyone over for a casual dinner. Pizza, a bagged salad, nothing Brooke had cooked. I'll give her this much, she never pretended to be something she wasn't in a kitchen. The pretending was reserved for other rooms. After dinner, while Brooke's younger sister Holly was telling some story about her commute, Eileen found a gap and turned to Brooke. I've been thinking about Thanksgiving, she said. Maybe Holly could take a couple of the sides, or we could just order the pies from that bakery on Lakeshore. They do a beautiful butter tart. Brooke laughed, the kind of laugh that's warm on top and settled underneath. Mom, that's literally what you're amazing at. Don't overthink it, it always turns out so beautiful when you do it. Holly nodded along. Her boyfriend Connor checked his phone. Tyler looked at his pizza and said nothing, not one word. I had raised that boy to speak up when something was unfair. Somewhere between his 20s and now, he'd misplaced that lesson. I kept my face even. Years on a factory floor teach you that showing your temper before you've decided what to do with it is wasted temper. In the car on the way home, I said to Eileen, that's not happening. She looked out the window. 28 people, alone, 5 in the morning. No. She went quiet for a second. I know. Then I already have a plan. I looked over at her. She was almost smiling. Tell me, I said. That night Eileen called Carol Anders. Carol had been her closest friend since their first year, working public health together. 20 years of knowing each other through staff meetings and home visits, and every hard case the two of them had carried home in their heads. Carol had retired out to Kelowna 4 years back, bought a place with a view of the lake. Eileen talked to her most Sunday mornings on the phone. I sat in the kitchen while Eileen was in the bedroom on the call, and when she came out 20 minutes later, something in her face had settled, like a decision had already taken hold. She sat across from me at the table, set her hands flat on the wood. Carol's invited us out for Thanksgiving, she said. Her deck overlooking the lake, her mother's roast chicken with rosemary, just the 3 of us. I said I'm in. She looked at me. Just like that? Eileen. I folded my hands. Our daughter-in-law sent you a work order. Our son watched her do it and didn't say a word. Carol's offering you a deck in Kelowna with a view. I paused. What exactly is there to decide? She let out a long breath, like something she'd been holding for weeks. She pulled the notepad by the phone toward her, wrote a few lines, folded the paper, set it under the sugar bowl. Then she opened her laptop and pulled up flights. I watched her find the 6:15 a.m. departure out of Pearson on Thanksgiving morning. 2 tickets to Kelowna. She looked up at me. I nodded once. She hit confirm. The texts kept coming all that week. Monday. Just a reminder, rolls really do need to be from scratch. Store-bought always tastes like cardboard lol. Wednesday. Hey mom. Scratch pie crust, right? Frozen always goes soggy. Found a great tutorial if you want it. Friday. One more thing. Fresh cranberry sauce, please. Not the can. Greg and Sandra are total foodies and I want everything elevated. Greg and Sandra. First time those names had come up. I asked Eileen who they were. Tyler's boss and his wife, she said. I sat with that a minute. This Thanksgiving, 16 items, 5 in the morning. Wasn't a family dinner. It was a showcase. Brooke wanted to impress Tyler's employer, and she'd decided Eileen's hands were going to be the tool she used to pull it off. Each text landed with no pleas and full certainty. Eileen answered everyone with a single word, okay. I asked her once if that was wise. I'm not stringing her along, she said. I'm just not arguing with someone who isn't listening. I'd been married to this woman 31 years. I knew her particular calm when she'd already committed to a course of action. The same calm she used to bring home from difficult conversations with families on her caseload. Patient, clear-eyed, done negotiating. The boarding passes sat printed in the dish on my dresser, next to my wallet. 2 passes, seats 11C and 11D, 6:15 in the morning. 10 days before Thanksgiving, we were already gone in every way that counted. The only thing left to settle was the timing. 8 days before Thanksgiving, Eileen drove over to Tyler's place to drop off a spare garage door clicker. She came home half an hour later and sat at the kitchen table without taking her coat off. I knew that look. What happened, she told me. The door was unlocked. She let herself in to leave the clicker on the counter, heard Brooke on the phone upstairs. Greg's definitely coming, him and Sandra. The Murchisons too, half the office. Basically, I just need to look amazing. Mom's handling all the food, so that part's covered. Mom's handling all the food. That part's covered. I sat back in my chair. There's a term in my trade for a wall that looks load-bearing but isn't. A partition put up to divide a room without actually holding the roof up. You don't find out it's false until you start pulling it apart and the ceiling doesn't move. That's what this was. Brooke had built a Thanksgiving that looked like family, but was really a corporate event, and the piece she'd decided was structural without ever asking was my wife. Eileen finally took her coat off, hung it on the chair back, looked at me. She doesn't think we'll actually do it, she said. She thinks I'll show up at 5 in the morning because I always have. Then Thanksgiving's going to teach her something, I said. Eileen almost smiled. I got up and put the kettle on. 6 days before Thanksgiving, I called Tyler myself. Eileen had asked me not to. She'd already talked to him directly, and it hadn't moved anything. But I'm his father, and there are things a man needs to hear from his father, especially when he doesn't want to. Tyler picked up on the second ring. I kept it short. Tyler, your mother's been handed a 16-dish list for 28 people, no help, 5 a.m. start. She told you it was too much. You told her to do it anyway. I need you to fix that. A pause. Dad, I know. But Brooke's already got everything. Tyler, another pause. It's just this one time. I'd worked alongside enough men to know when somebody's repeating words that aren't theirs, preloaded and ready. I'm telling you plainly, I said. Your mother is not catering your wife's work party. Fix it. Dad, I really think you're... I love you. Good night, I said, and hung up. Eileen was at the table when I came back in. She looked up, read my face. Well, she said, he's not ready to hear it yet. He will be, I said. She nodded slowly, stood, went to the front closet, reached to the top shelf and brought down her suitcase. Set it on the bed, started packing. Before I tell you what we packed, let me ask you something. Have you ever told someone a hard truth and watched them choose not to hear it? Drop a number in the comments if you know that feeling. And if you haven't subscribed yet, this is the spot. Because what happens next is the part nobody sees coming. I want to tell you about a toolbox apron. Heavy canvas, navy blue, from a hardware shop in Burlington we used to stop at on the way to the cottage years ago. I bought it for woodworking, the deep pockets, the weight of it. I wore it every Saturday I spent in the garage, refinishing something. Nobody asked me to refinish. Tyler used to come down and watch, sit on the workbench stool, and ask me questions about whatever I was doing. The apron hung on a nail by the garage door, a streak of dried varnish on the front pocket I'd never gotten around to cleaning. The night before Thanksgiving, while Eileen packed, I went out to the garage, not sure what I was looking for. Something to do with my hands, maybe. I took the apron off the nail and held it a second. Thought about all the Thanksgivings I'd stood next to Eileen at the stove, 30-some years of them. She ran the kitchen. I was support. I accepted that division happily, because I know my limits. I can't dice an onion to any standard she'd recognize, but I could stand beside her for 6 hours, hand her things, make her laugh, make sure she wasn't doing it alone. That was the part Brooke had missed completely, not the labor, the company. I hung the apron back on its nail. It didn't need to come to Kelowna. It belonged here, just not used this particular Thanksgiving. I turned off the garage light and went back inside. Eileen had already laid my suitcase open on the bed, half-packed. She knew me well enough to start without me. After I finished packing, I found her sitting at the kitchen table with the notepad in front of her. She'd written it days earlier, 4 sentences, folded once, sitting there like something that had already made up its mind. She unfolded it now, smoothed it flat with her palm. I read it over her shoulder. Tyler, I love you. That hasn't changed and it won't, but I can't cook Thanksgiving dinner for 28 people alone. I said so and nobody listened. We've gone to see Carol. We'll be back Tuesday. The kitchen's yours. Mom and Dad. She'd added "and Dad" at the bottom in different ink. I hadn't asked her to. She set the note in the center of the table, reached up to the cupboard above the sink for the small glass she used for her orange juice every morning. Plain, nothing special, and set it over the note like a weight. We stood there together a moment, the light on, the house quiet. We're going to hear about this, I said. Yes, Tyler's going to be upset. Yes. She looked at me, and 31 years of marriage still meant she could say more with one look than most people manage in a paragraph. You ready? I asked. I've been ready about 2 weeks, she said. I switched off the kitchen light. She carried her suitcase to the door. I carried mine. We called a cab and stood waiting side by side in the front hall. The driver didn't ask why two people were heading to the airport at 4 in the morning the day before a holiday, which suited us fine. Low radio, heat cranked up. I leaned beside me, with her hands folded in her lap, the stillness of someone who's made a decision and is now just letting it happen. Pearson at 4:30 in the morning has a particular quality. Not empty, suspended, like it's holding its breath between one day and the next. I bought us both coffee from a kiosk that was open out of pure stubbornness. Terrible coffee. We drank it anyway. Eileen's phone had 3 unread messages from Brooke sent the night before. Reminders, instructions, a couple of emojis. Neither of us opened them. By 6, they called our group. We boarded, and I thought, right now 28 people believe a Thanksgiving dinner is being prepared for them. In a few hours, somebody's going to walk into a kitchen and find a note under a juice glass. My phone buzzed as we stepped into the jet bridge. Tyler. Hey Dad. Swinging by around 7 to grab you and Mom. Brooke wants you there for 8 to get started. See you soon. He didn't know yet. I put the phone in my jacket pocket. We found our seats. Eileen took the window. The plane pushed back 2 minutes late, which felt about right. When the wheels left the ground, she reached over and put her hand on mine. We didn't need to say anything. Carol was waiting at Kelowna arrivals with 2 coffees and absolutely no dramatic reaction. Exactly what you want from a friend of 20 years. She hugged Eileen first, then looked at me. Marcus, you actually came. Did you think I wouldn't? I thought Eileen might talk you out of it on the drive to the airport. She tried, I said. Eileen looked at me. Once, I added. We drove out toward Carol's place with the windows cracked. October air out there is nothing like Ontario. Dry, a little smoky from somewhere up the valley, vineyards going gold on the hillsides. After 30 years in southern Ontario, it felt like a different country entirely. Carol's place was small, cedar-sided, a deck out back that looked straight down the lake. A gray tabby named Pepper looked up from the porch chair when we arrived and went straight back to sleep. We took our coffees out to the deck. The water caught the morning light in long, flat pieces. A bald eagle sat on a piling across the bay, doing nothing at all with complete confidence. Eileen's phone lit up on the table, Tyler, then Brooke, then Holly's number. She turned it face down. Carol looked at me. You know it won't stop. It'll stop when it stops, I said. She poured me more coffee. I sat back and thought, somewhere in Ontario right now there's a kitchen with a note in it and no turkey. And here I am on a deck with my wife watching an eagle go absolutely nowhere. Some problems solve themselves. Tyler told us what happened after, in pieces over the following days. I'll tell you what I know. At 7:58 that morning, Brooke came downstairs in a new linen apron, the striped artisan kind, bought specifically for a prep photo she had planned. Golden kitchen light, flour on the counter, the start of something for Instagram. The kitchen was dark and cold. No Eileen, no Marcus, no turkey on the counter, no prep underway, no smell of anything. Just the table, and on it a glass, and under the glass a folded piece of paper. Brooke read it. Tyler came down 2 minutes later and found her standing there still holding it, not moving. He read it too, stood for half a minute without saying anything. Then he called me. I didn't pick up. He called Eileen. No answer. Called my cell again, texted, tried the house line on the off chance we'd left our phones behind. Then he called Holly. Holly showed up at 8:15, still in her coat. Can you cook a turkey? Brooke asked her. Mel, I've never cooked a turkey in my life, Holly said. Connor offered to look it up on YouTube. Nobody took him up on that. Meanwhile, 28 people had confirmed. The centerpiece flowers had already been delivered. Greg and Sandra Pruitt had RSVP'd within 20 minutes of getting the invite. I was watching an eagle in Kelowna. The clock in Tyler's kitchen read 8:32, 6.5 hours to dinner. By 9, Brooke had called 4 restaurants. The first stopped taking Thanksgiving orders in September. The second had a packaged dinner but needed 72 hours notice. The third didn't pick up. The fourth, a place she'd bookmarked from some food magazine, was fully booked dine-in with no takeout on the holiday. She hung up without saying goodbye. Tyler drove to the Sobeys at 9:30. The turkey section, a full aisle 2 weeks earlier, was down to 3 frozen birds, the biggest at 20 pounds, and needing 4 days in the fridge to thaw safely. He stood there with an empty cart and no good options. Came home with 3 rotisserie chickens from the hot deli, 2 tubs of instant mashed potatoes, a bag of frozen dinner rolls, a butter tart from the bakery case with a dented lid, a wedge of brie and some crackers. He remembered at the last minute Brooke had mentioned a cheese board. Holly tried the carrots from a recipe on her phone, got a call partway through, and forgot to set a timer. The kitchen smelled like burnt sugar for the rest of the afternoon. At 1:30, guests started arriving. Greg Pruitt and his wife Sandra came in at 1:45, exactly on time, the punctuality of people attending a work-adjacent event who've calculated precisely how long they intend to stay. Greg wore a blazer. Sandra handed Brooke a bottle of ice wine at the door with a smile that gave away nothing. The table looked beautiful. Brooke really did have an eye for that. The linen, the golden amber centerpiece, candles at every place. Then the food came out. 3 rotisserie chickens on her good china, instant mashed potatoes with a faint gray tint under the candlelight, frozen rolls cool in the middle, the butter tart on a cake stand, the bakery box nowhere in sight, but the dent from the lid still pressed faintly into the crust. Sandra Pruitt looked at the spread, set her wine glass down carefully, said nothing. Brooke smiled at the table and said, "We had a bit of a last-minute change of plans. My in-laws weren't feeling well." Greg nodded. "That's too bad." In the kitchen, Tyler stood at the counter with his back to the room. He'd asked his mother to cook for 28 people alone. She'd told him plainly it was too much. He'd told her, "Can you just do this one thing?" Standing there looking at 3 grocery store chickens on his wife's good china, Tyler understood, in the way things finally land once they stop bouncing off the surface, what one thing had actually meant. Carol's mother's roast chicken with rosemary and garlic was everything she'd promised. Crisp skin, deeply fragrant. The kind of attention that makes plain food taste like a decision somebody made on purpose. We had it with real mashed potatoes, lumpy in the good way, a salad off Carol's deck garden, and a local Pinot Gris that punched well above its price tag. We ate outside as the light over the lake shifted from sharp morning gold to something low and amber, the sun easing down behind the hills on the far shore. Pepper migrated from the porch chair to the doorway, claiming the threshold the way a cat claims any boundary it considers optional. I was telling Carol about a pulp dryer overhaul I'd handled the year before I retired. Straightforward job, miserable weather for 6 weeks straight, when Eileen's phone rang on the table between us. Brooke. Eileen looked at the phone, then at me, then at Carol. Carol looked at her chicken. Eileen picked up. "Mom." Brooke's voice, a register higher than usual, tight at the edges. "Where are you? Do you know what's happening here right now? Greg is sitting at our table and there's nothing ready. You could have at least called." Eileen set her fork down, looked out at the water. "Brooke," she said, the same voice she used to use with a worried family on a home visit, clear, unhurried, finished negotiating. "I told you I couldn't do it alone. I said it 3 weeks ago. I said it again, Sunday at Tyler's." Marcus called Tyler directly. Nobody listened. A pause. "So you thought about yourselves instead." A silence on the line. "That is so selfish." "We'll be home Tuesday," Eileen said. "I hope the rest of your evening goes well." She hung up. Carol refilled her wine without being asked. 20 seconds later, my phone rang. "Tyler," I answered. He didn't speak right away. I could hear him outside, the muffled noise of the party behind a closed door, then just the wind and somebody's back deck. "Dad." His voice had changed. The defensiveness was gone. What was left was quieter, the sound of a man who'd stopped performing and started feeling something. I don't know what to say. I knew it was too much. I kept telling myself it'd be fine, that you and Mom would just, and I didn't say anything when I should have. He stopped. "I'm sorry, Dad. Tell Mom I'm sorry." I believed him. Tyler had never been a dishonest kid. He'd taken the easier path, kept quiet to avoid a fight, let things slide because confrontation felt expensive. That's a failure of nerve, not character. There's a difference. And it was the same failure I'd made earlier in this whole thing myself. He came by it honestly. "I know," I said. "We'll talk when we're home. Go take care of your guests." "Is the food good?" he asked. I looked at the plate in front of me. The crisp chicken, the buttered potatoes, the warm deck. My wife across the table finally relaxed for the first time in 3 weeks, the amber light behind her. "It's wonderful," I said. Carol made her mother's chicken. A pause. "Good," I could hear him steady himself. "Good, Dad." "Go," I said, Tuesday. After I set the phone down, Eileen looked at me across the table. I picked up my fork. "Roast chicken," she said. "Yes," I said. "Please." Tyler told us the rest in pieces over the next few days. Greg Pruitt stayed 2 hours, the kind of man who's polite in exact proportion to how well things are going. Not cold when they go sideways, just measured, giving a little less of himself than he might have otherwise. He ate one of the rotisserie chickens without complaint, complimented the centerpiece, which genuinely earned it. At some point, Sandra said to Tyler quietly, "Your parents usually do the cooking, don't they? Everything all right with them?" Tyler said they'd had a prior commitment they couldn't move, which was true. Brooke, from across the table, said there'd been a last-minute change of plans. Also true, depending on your definition of last minute. The two stories didn't quite line up, the way improvised ones don't when two people are solving the same problem from different angles without comparing notes first. Holly had given up on the carrots and was sitting at the end of the table next to Connor. At one point, she looked down the table at Brooke and said, quiet but clear, "You should have asked them properly." Brooke said, "Don't start." Holly didn't, but she held the look a second longer, steady, level, the expression of a younger sister who's just run out of benefit of the doubt, then went back to her plate. Guests left by 5, earlier than a holiday dinner, usually wraps, earlier than it would have, with a real turkey and a kitchen that had been running since dawn, and the kind of warmth a house gets when somebody's been cooking in it all day. After everyone left, Tyler did the dishes. First time, he told me later, he'd ever cleaned up after a big family meal himself. That surprised me until I thought about it, and then it didn't. Eileen had always done it. I'd helped sometimes. She'd always done it. Standing at the sink, Brooke came in and told him he should have called us more. He shut off the water. I did call them. They told me it was too much. A pause. "You knew?" "Yeah," Tyler said. "I knew." He turned the water back on. Brooke left the kitchen. She never posted the photos from earlier that day. The centerpiece, the table before the food went on it, they stayed in her camera roll. Greg's next email to Tyler the following Monday was a routine note about a project schedule. No mention of Thanksgiving at all. We flew home Tuesday afternoon. Toronto was gray and drizzling. The particular October gray Southern Ontario specializes in. Not dramatic enough to be interesting, just a low ceiling of cloud that makes you appreciate having spent 4 days somewhere with eagles and a view of a lake. The cab pulled into our driveway and Tyler was sitting on the front step. Not his house, ours. He'd driven 40 minutes to sit on our steps without calling ahead. That's told me he'd thought about it long enough to know a phone call wouldn't cut it. He stood when I came up the walk. We looked at each other. He looked tired the way people do when they've been honest with themselves about something for the first time and it's cost them sleep. "Brooke didn't come," he said. "Okay," I said. We went inside. Eileen had gotten there a few minutes ahead of me, kettle already on. The three of us sat at the kitchen table. Same table the note had sat on 4 days earlier. Same chairs we'd used for 30 years. I knew it was too much and I said nothing, Tyler said. I kept telling myself it wasn't worth a fight. I let Brooke treat you both like you'd just be there, and I convinced myself that was fine. He stopped. "It wasn't." "No," I said, "it wasn't." He looked at me like he'd been bracing for more scaffolding around the truth. I didn't have any to give him. Eileen put her hand over his on the table. "We love you," she said. "That's not up for debate, but we will not be made invisible for someone else's convenience. Not even for yours." "I hear you," Tyler said. "Good," Eileen said, and poured the tea. We sat there a while without filling the quiet. It was the kind of silence that only shows up after something true's been said and actually landed. It was the best 30 minutes the three of us had spent together in 2 years. "I want to ask you something. Have you ever had a moment where someone finally heard you, after a long stretch of not being heard? Tell me in the comments, and if this one meant something to you, send it to someone who needs it today." "Brooke called on the Monday," I answered. "I want you to know," she said, "that what you did was really hurtful." "Brooke," I said, "I understand it felt that way. I'd like you to understand that sending someone a 16-item list and calling it a family invitation is hurtful too. We can talk about this honestly, or we can leave it where it is. Your choice?" A silence. Then she hung up. She called back 2 days later. This time she talked less and listened more. Asked how the trip was. Said Kelowna sounded nice. Said she'd been thinking. She didn't apologize in those exact words, but she asked questions for the first time in 2 years instead of issuing instructions, and I took that as the closest thing to an opening we were likely to get. Eileen took the second call. They talked for almost 15 minutes, longer than they'd ever talked. Eileen told me after, without Brooke handing her a single task. There was no big resolution, no scene where everyone cried and understood each other perfectly and promised to be different people. That's not how it goes. What changed was smaller and more functional than that. An assumption got removed. The one that said our time, our labor, our willingness were simply available whenever needed, no asking required. That was gone. And without it, things had to actually be negotiated, which meant they had to be talked about, which meant everyone had to start acting like people with real choices. That was enough. Tyler started calling more, asking instead of updating us on decisions already made. Small things that added up. Eileen signed up for a pottery class at the community center, Thursday mornings, something she'd been wanting to do for a year and kept pushing off because there was always somebody else who needed her first. We booked Kelowna again for March. Carol was already planning which winery we'd visit. One Saturday morning I put on the old varnish-stained apron and refinished a side table out in the garage that didn't need refinishing, just for the two of us to have something to do with our hands. Eileen brought coffee out and sat on the workbench stool, and we didn't talk about Brooke or Tyler or any of it. We just spent the morning out there together. About a week after we got back, Eileen was clearing out the front closet and pulled down a shoebox from the top shelf. My handwriting on the lid. Photos, misc. We brought it to the kitchen table and went through it together. The usual archaeology of a shared life. Birthday parties from the 90s. Tyler at 8, holding up a pike with the pride of a man who'd accomplished something permanent. A church picnic neither of us could place. Near the bottom, Eileen held up a photo from a Thanksgiving 8 or 9 years back. You could tell by how the kitchen looked before we redid the cabinets. She was at the stove. I was standing behind her, arms loose around her shoulders, cheek tilted toward her hair. We were both laughing at something. I don't remember what. The timer was probably going, the turkey in the oven. One of us had said something that landed exactly right. I didn't remember being photographed, but I remembered the feeling. Being there, not watching from a comfortable distance, not stepping in for the parts that needed me, and disappearing for the rest. Just in it. All of it, because that's where I wanted to be. Because she'd never had to ask, which made it matter more, not less. That was the thing Brooke never understood, and the thing Tyler had forgotten somewhere along the way, and had to relearn the hard way. You don't send someone you love a work order. You show up. Eileen put the photo in a small frame and set it on the kitchen windowsill, next to the juice glass she still uses every morning. We stood there looking at it a minute. We should have gone out to see Carol years ago, she said. We were exactly where we needed to be, I said. Until we weren't. She looked at me. That's pretty deep for a Tuesday. I'm a deep man, Eileen. She laughed and I thought, that's what 31 years were for. Not producing a Thanksgiving dinner for somebody's boss. Producing this, the two of us in our kitchen on an ordinary Tuesday, laughing about something small, know where we had to be. If you've ever been handed a list instead of an invitation, this one's for you. You don't owe an explanation to people who never noticed you in the first place. Here's my question. Have you ever set a boundary that felt like a risk, and then felt right the second you did it? Tell me in the comments below, and if you're sitting with something right now, trying to decide between staying quiet and finally speaking up, I hope Marcus and Eileen's Thanksgiving helped you make up your mind.